Thanks, Jackie, for going over a couple of different challenges that Samsung has. My name is Brandon Grissom. I'm going to go over a couple of the manufacturing details about Samsung, and then I'm going to wrap up the meeting talking about our recommendations for the company. First, as you can see in the slides, Samsung's total production plants, that's just the locations of where the production plants are. You see the majority of them in Vietnam and China, and then some in Guji in Korea. Samsung Electronics is a total. It doesn't break it down by cell phones, TVs, audio, mobile, stuff like that. But it gives you an idea of where the majority of the Korean plants are at. As you can see, Vietnam and China have most of it. This is basically the small product life cycle of Samsung. Basically all their electronics except for the phones ship like this. The phones are a little bit different, but it's along the same lines. If you look at the top, you start with initial production. That's just the majority of the pieces that are going to be placed. Your raw materials are immersed into parts, and then they ship it to wherever they're going to manufacture it. Again, that goes to the final assembly. They ship it again to their final destination where they're going to be sold. And then they have a small repair, recycle program that fixes Samsung's electronics at the final destination. This is mostly handled by third-party vendors. There's only a couple of actual Samsung recycling centers and recycling programs and repair centers actually owned by Samsung. The majority are done by third party. Now, the recommendations for the marketing portions of Samsung. One recommendation is to have a joint venture with Apple or Google for pairing their devices. One thing that's great about that is it increases the profitability and opens a new market for Samsung products. Once you start getting into Samsung being able to make iPhones or specific phones for Apple or for Google, then you start breaking into a market that Samsung hasn't gotten into before. And then rebrand products that failed with new names and new designs. Typically you're talking about the Note 7 long-term solution that helps to change the public opinion. You change the name and you kind of change the product a little bit. It helps people forget about the fact that it was called a Note, because no matter what you look at, people are going to think the Note is something that caught on fire. So that's a great recommendation for marketing. As far as the hedge fund accounting practices, Elliott Management's recommendation is pretty spot on. You separate Samsung Electronics from Samsung C&T. You make C&T go with part of the Samsung construction operations, and then you have the electronics separate. That way Samsung's not losing as much money, because obviously the electronics portion is the one that makes all the money. What you worry about there is how the Lee family, the head of Korea, the CEO, is going to be able to handle that, still be in charge of all the company operations and the whole conglomerate as a whole. But that's something that they can work out, and the Lee family can keep on running Samsung. Special payout of $27 billion from investors at the separation. That would be a special one-time payout for all the investors in Samsung Electronics to make up for their lack of their basic low dividends to shareholders, simply because they hoard cash. They have $69 billion in cash and liquidity just sitting in their bank accounts. Most of that money, that if it's left over, goes to their other operations, which don't make as much money. And then by splitting off, you're taking off some of the bad assets and keeping the good assets, and it makes for long-term sustainable dividends for shareholders. One of the things that Elliott Management wants to do is a 75% profit payout for shareholders, which is something that Samsung doesn't do right now, and that would increase profitability and price per share. And recommendations for quality control, which is something obviously Samsung has had an issue with lately. Overhaul the entire quality control procedures. Put a new system in place that's not going to let these things happen again. Part of that is including an 8-point battery check for all new devices. Make sure that, obviously everything that's going to go into the phones and electronics is going to work before you ship it out and sell it to customers. Another issue is you want to increase the training and knowledge for all employees. You want to make sure every employee, because they do operate in third world countries with low education levels, you want to make sure those employees are trained and knowledgeable about what they're doing, what they're building, and how they're building it. And then one big issue with Samsung that's still in the news, hold their upper management more accountable and responsible for product quality. Pretty much all the time is that it's going to be middle managers or lower that are held responsible for fiascos like what happened with the Note 7 and Samsung appliances, where the lids were coming off the washing machines. Upper management tends not to get reprimanded or fired simply because they're in senior management. I think that quality control upper management positions should be held accountable, and that's something that Samsung needs to do in order to make their brand quality again. And then recommendations for the manufacturing sector. One thing Samsung does really well is they assemble their pieces in low-cost countries. But what you lose, you have higher shipping costs, especially with the closing of Hanjin shipping. So you could assemble up to the percentage required for free trade deals, like in NAFTA. It has to be 80% assembled in a member country of NAFTA. So you build 78%, you ship it over to Mexico, you build the remaining 22%, and then you have a tax-free or tariff-free entry into the US market and Canadian market, which is obviously Samsung's biggest market. Anything that has a free trade deal with the US as far as percentage-wise is something Samsung needs to look at, simply because all they're going to do is move their production plants to different countries as wages increase in certain countries. So having free trade agreements might be a better way to go. Again, speaking of the loss of Hanjin shipping, negotiating lower prices with new shipping companies. Samsung did a lot of the business with Hanjin. Now that it's bankrupt, they have the opportunity to get new contracts. Maersk is obviously a great company that they can look to. They could also look to expand their own Samsung shipping line, Samsung Logistics, expand that business with some of their cash capital liquidity, and build new ships or lease new ships and operate their ships on their own and with Samsung Electronics to be able to ship those at a lower rate. And then have a higher environmental awareness. Right now, they choose countries that basically do not care what they do to the environment. They tend to try to keep that out of the news, but it does go into the news quite often, whatever they do. And then the recycling programs need to have a little stronger push, because they do know they have a lot of plastic that goes into landfills. And that's something they could work on and have a higher public opinion. And then in the future for Samsung, marketing and awakening the scandals. So you want to make sure that you're rebranding those products that failed, and you want to make sure that where the company is making changes to their quality control. New accounting for the company that goes from the split of taking less profitable portions of the Samsung Electronics and making them a separate entity. That way shareholders can get a better price and more profit per share. And then increased scope and accountability for quality control. We kind of went over that. Basically, you want to make sure that the managers are held responsible and that employees are getting better training. And then realign manufacturer for leaner, less costly production. Take a look at, tariffs, trade deals, even as the U.S. rewrites them. Take a look at the best opportunity where you can lower costs and ship for cheaper with lower taxes, rather than just going for low-cost production. Other than that, I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Take care. Thank you.